following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to The People's View. I'm your host, Carl Seidel. The People's View is sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee, and you can find out more about the activities of the committee by going to its website, nashuagop.org. We meet on the second Thursday of the month at the Crown Plaza Hotel Auditorium, and we'd like to see you there.
Welcome to The People's View, a program dedicated to discussing local, state, and national issues and their effect on the American people. The People's View provides a platform for state representatives and national figures to present their viewpoint. Whether it's social, economic, or financial topics, you'll hear it on The People's View.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, and our guest is the President of the Board of Education, George Harrington. George, thank you for coming on. And today you can tell our listeners a little bit about your background and why you went to get on the Board of Education, and now you're president right away.
Whoa, my background. I wasn't expecting this for a start. I've been on the board before. I was on, it's been 16 years since I was on the board. I spent 2 terms on there. 8 years, I spent 5 of those years as board president. And then I left. By profession, I'm an airline pilot, retired. And once you've been on the Board of Education for, certainly for 2 terms, you kind of get bitten by the bug, and the infection has stayed with me. And so as things progressed and now seeing some changes coming along, I thought I'd like to get involved, and it worked out.
Well, you got a busy agenda on there for you.
It's been real busy since.
A lot of things that come up. You see in the paper, you got a big budget to go through. It's over the limit that the mayor has requested, and I know you're going to have work on that. And you got other things coming up too. So maybe we can talk a little bit about just the budget, just an overall.
Sure.
What's the progress on that?
Well, we're I guess, to start at the beginning, where you alluded to, the way the process works is the superintendent brings in a budget proposal for the next fiscal year, and incorporated in that are things that the administration would like to do, changes in programs, expansion of programs, new programs, that sort of thing. And particularly this past year that just ended with the previous board, they had an ad hoc goals committee that had sat down and looked at some areas, and one of the areas that they emphasized or looked at was an area that they wanted to add a few teachers at the elementary level to keep the class sizes down. And so that was incorporated into the budget. You probably read there was it was time to renegotiate the transportation contract. And so all of that, it kind of is an accumulation of all of those things, and it's a starting point to talk about that. After that, we spend a number of meetings where we sit down with the administration and people from various departments, and they talk about what's going on in their department, the needs. And it's been a nice refresher for me because I've been away for a while, but the special ed people will come in, and technology and curriculum people. And so we get the chance to get a little bit of the thinking behind some of these different pieces of the budget. And then we have a public hearing coming up next week, and then a few more meetings like that, and there's going to be, I think, a second public meeting, and then we get down to the nitty-gritty of trying to figure out, and we're learning about maybe some areas that were overestimated and all that. So we get down to the real nitty-gritty. I think you can be fairly confident it's not going to be 5% when we're when we finally.
If I know the mayor, she's going to be looking over your shoulder.
Well, that may be one of the reasons it won't be 5%. But yeah, we understand about the cap, but there are other pressures that we have to deal with too, and so we're going to try and find a good balance.
Well, one of the big well, you have lots of programs there at the school, and some people say that it might be too many programs. you going to be looking into that and seeing whether some of those programs really don't cut the mustard and should be done away with, or what?
Well, I think that right now we're looking at, well, we were busy in the first part of January. We were talking about Common Core, Smarter Balance assessment, and competency-based grading at the high school. And already competency-based grading was a change in the whole approach to grading at the high school, and that was at the point where the administration came in and the people who were working on the committees come in and talk to us about it. They were aiming for an implementation in the fall of 2014, this coming fall. And that implementation, because of various discussions we had, questions that weren't totally answered, as more discussion took place, things that became realized that weren't really in place, there's been a decision to delay that implementation for another year. And it's significant enough change so that we want to have good communication so that the parents understand, the teachers understand what's going to be expected of them. And I mean, we're changing a grading system that's been around for 100 years. And it's the kind of thing you want to get right the first time. You don't want to rush into it and have it fall on its face, because students pay, teachers pay, the district doesn't look good, it's not good for public relations. There's no winners in a bad system, and so we want to, so for one, that's something we're going to be delaying.
Is evaluating the pupils' work at.
Well, it is. It's a very different concept in that, and there are variations on it. In its purest form, a student could come into an algebra class, and if they had a strength in math, for example, they could come in and take 2 or 3 or 4 exams, and if they passed those exams and demonstrated they had those competencies that were required to complete Algebra 1, for example, then they would be done. They would get credit for the course and they would move on. Some of the issues around that, of course, that would not be most of your students. And in the early iterations of the program, there was a discussion that there would be 4 levels of grading. The first level would be indicate that you could find the classroom, but you were brand new at the course. The second one, you were beginning to understand some of the competencies. Level 3, where you were proficient at the competencies. I probably shouldn't mix competencies and proficiencies. You had to attain them, and then you excelled at level 4, and they were going to require a level 3 to pass or move on to the next course. And if you hadn't attained all of the competencies, and there might be anywhere from, I believe, 3 to 6 competencies for a course, then you could develop a plan with a teacher if you had 60% of them as to how you were going to attain the other 40%, or you might have to retake the course. And we were concerned that that would create a backlog in a course like algebra again, where students wouldn't get there, and we would have maybe 400 students the first year, and half of them would come back plus another 400. And so it's issues like that we need to get a better handle on before we go forward.
Yeah, what would you do with the people at the other end of the scale that just can't get the concepts?
Good question. Another question that needs to be answered. It's not unlike the idea of No Child Left Behind, that everybody would be 100% proficient. I think we have to find some way to address the fact that we now have learned after 9 years of No Child Left Behind that everybody won't be proficient. And so those are some of the areas that we're going to have to address.
Yeah, you don't want social promotions just because of age. You want to have somebody who has really picked it up.
That's what you're right there, because social promotions, lots of problems with that. Probably the biggest, I guess, is that when the student finishes school and leaves with a diploma, they aren't very well prepared for working or going on to school. But also the frustration for students as they go through that process, if they move from one grade to the next without having the basics that they need, then they continue to be more and more frustrated, not being able to accomplish. They lose interest in school. All of those things that become a part of the problem. So,
have they designed anything to handle students that aren't really getting something? Is there a way of, I don't know, taking extra teaching efforts or summer school or whatever special handling that
Well,
might be necessary for some of these
Well,
students?
we have summer school that is available for some students, but in the area of competency-based grading, one of the things, another piece of it is what they are are talking about calling an enrichment block. And it would carve out some time out of the school day where students would be able to, if they needed help with a course, they would be able to work with a teacher. And that's part of it, but they also would have an opportunity to do some other things. It's in the relatively early talking stages. The board hasn't been involved at all in those discussions. The district committee has been working on it, and once we get a little bit farther along, maybe the other side of the budget, hopefully we're going to be able to sit down and talk about that and move forward with that, because I think you need, that is a critical piece in making all of this work. There has to be an opportunity for that extra time for extra help.
With certain people, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that happened a couple years ago that made the newspaper was a number of our high school graduates here in Nashua were at the community college taking remedial classes. Now, is that something that the schools are following now? I mean, is there something being done? Because as I recall, there was well over 100 people that were taking remedial classes at Nashua Community College.
And I think that that's not uncommon. Other schools do it, not to make excuses for Nashua, but I think that other schools find that problem, and I think it's not just at the community college, but I think it's UNH and other schools are also finding that problem. And it comes back, I think, one of the things that has been changed at the elementary level is they do, I think it's 20 minutes a day of basic math, where my granddaughter's in first grade, and they talk about doublers, 2 plus 2 and 4 plus 4 and things like that, and getting that sound foundation that probably you had, I know I had when I went to school, the multiplication tables and all that. Hopefully to avoid that situation where you go to a store somewhere and the computer breaks down and the clerk can't make change.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, and those are the real measures. I mean, we look at kneecap scores and those things, but to me, the real measure of the success of the district is, can the students go on to the community college or the UNH or any other college and enter into the level of curriculum that's there without having requiring remediation, or can they go into the workforce and function effectively? So,
yeah, you talked about the kneecap scores. They didn't, it seems that we were sort of just floating along around, I don't know, average or maybe even below average.
Well, they are troubling, and we just got some kneecap results, just the raw data, so to speak, so far. But in looking at them at the elementary level, they've been taken from, I think 2007 was the first year, so 2013, and I think only 4 schools at the elementary level had a higher level of proficiency in 2013 than they did in 2007 in math. In reading, I think it was half of them had a higher level of proficiency than they did when they started. And of course, that is a number, and there's lots of things that go into that. But it is an area of concern. And of course, now, if we change to Smarter Balance, then we have no frame of reference. This year we could look back on the previous years and to see if there had been any successes. And if you have a school that has had some successes, you might look to them and see, are they doing something different than some of the other schools? But there's also the makeup of the student population and lots of things that go into that.
Well, I know we have a number of different, I hate to say just groups of people, but ones with different characteristics, backgrounds, et cetera. We try to lump it all together in one thing fits all and give them a test. Do you actually break them into subgroups where you can maybe handle like students who have English as a second language and see how they're doing relative to
I'm not sure. I think that in the kneecap analysis that they can look at that in more detail. And those are difficult issues. We have to, we look at students that come to the district with a variety of backgrounds. And so you have students coming into first grade who are readers, and you have students coming into first grade who don't know their entire alphabet yet. And so that is where I think we need to place the bulk of our energies, because I think that's where we'll get the most payoff. If we can get those students, they will never be all the same because, I mean, they're people from different backgrounds, as you said. But if we can get them closer to some common level, it makes it easier for the teacher to work with. You can imagine how difficult it would be with a teacher with 22 or so students in the class and some wanting to read and some confused about their letters. And so it makes it easier for the teacher. The children, if you can get to that point, can all move ahead together and have that sound foundation that they need that will serve them better when they get to middle school and high school. But it's a huge task, and there are so many aspects that play into it. That
I recognize
simple-
that, you know, even industry has that problem, and they try to make it up. And it's a big business now to offer these courses for people that are in industry for whatever skill they're lacking or not as proficient as they should be. So I was just wondering how they were, how to handle that. You know, how do you do that with such the kind of a group of students that you have?
Well,
mean,
as I say, I
the
think
cities are, I guess it's a bigger problem in the cities.
it's a very diverse
Yeah.
population. As you say, we have a number of students who come in with English as a second language. We have students who come from, who have traveled a lot and never been able to get established in one school. If you have students whose parents were never very successful in education, they have an aversion to going and dealing with a principal or dealing with teachers.
Or even helping their child.
Yeah, a lot of,
Because
you
they
have,
don't
we
feel-
have students in the district whose parents don't read in English. And so we can't, and rightly so, go into the home and tell parents what time they should feed their children, what they should feed them, what time they should go to bed, how much time they should do with spend on homework. But there are areas that we can work with them in school, and one of the things, as I mentioned, I think that we want to try and keep those class sizes down in those early grades so that the teacher is better able to work with those students, particularly in those classes that have such a diverse makeup of the student population.
Well, talking about Common Core, let's get
We were?
No, well, you're talking about standards and everything, and you're switching over to Common Core. Is that something that might be useful to delay a little bit, to get some of these controversial issues a little bit worked out, like you're saying that you're working on, you know, that other objective that they had for grading?
Well, I look at Common Core and I kind of break it down, and I look at the standards that Common Core actually brings to us, and that's what it is, it's Common Core standards. And then there is the curriculum aspect where we have to develop a curriculum, or you could go out and buy a curriculum, I suppose, that will teach those elements, and then finding the resources that will supplement that curriculum. And then there is the assessment piece, and within that assessment piece you have the structure of the questions and how they are, whether or not they're appropriate and are they clear. And then there's also, given the Smarter Balanced assessment, there's the technological piece. And so there's no one piece that is in there. I think, personally, I think the standards themselves are, generally speaking, fine. I think that they are, I think, more demanding than the standards we've had in the past. Some people will say it's a dumbing down. I don't see that in what I've looked at. But I think that when we get somewhere in the middle school to maybe early high school, we reach a point where the one-size-fits-all doesn't really apply anymore. I think, you know, there's some basic math and basic reading skills and all through the 5th, 6th grade, somewhere in there, that are common to everything. But once we get beyond that, and we have students that begin to choose careers, and we need to help them along with that, but to say that the same standards are necessary, required for each of those students, I think is a little bit of a stretch. And so I think that's where we're really, as far as the standards are concerned, that's where we have to take a closer look at what they are, and are they relevant, particularly for a student that has an interest that might be somewhat unique and has nothing to do with quadratic equations. To force them into an
learn
area
that,
that they have no interest, they have no strengths, doesn't seem to serve much purpose to me, and in fact can be very frustrating for the student to go through that. And so those are the areas where I think, personally, we need to look at that piece of the Common Core, the standards. Curriculum, we're in a situation where we're struggling to keep up with the curriculum. And we have some of these issues, some side issues that have played into it to a certain extent. Our assistant superintendent for curriculum that's in charge of all of this just took the job in August. And so we had a change in there. And so some of the things that are going on were started by somebody else and may not have been the way she would have done it, but once you're committed, you kind of have to go. And so we're dealing there. But the curriculum is coming along, and like any new project like this, it'll take a little bit of time. If you want to go to Smarter Balanced Assessment, we can go there. You can talk about it.
Well, what I was wondering, what I understand on those tests, and of course there was a letter written by the principal and teachers at
Fairgrounds.
Fairgrounds School, yeah. How does it work where you have a question, and depending on how you answer it, you either go here or you go here for the next question? You know, as they determine whether your answer has been accepted.
Well, I don't think that any of the tests that have been done to date have been the adaptive model.
Oh, okay.
When it's finally done and in place, the Smarter Balance is supposed to be what's called an adaptive test. I have never taken one. I've talked to people who have for different things, and it's quite different, because where you would normally study if you were going to be taking a test on the Constitution or whatever, you would study that and you would have a sense of whether you knew it and what to expect for the questions. In this, it can kind of be a little different in that you answer a question. If the answers all seem easy, then maybe you did really well, or maybe you just didn't do well enough to move into the hard questions. And so I think there's a psychological aspect, if you will, to it also. But the technical side of it, I'm rather disappointed in some of the reports, and I've tried it a little bit on my home computer. There are seem to be glitches in how to move around within the software, how to go back, how to put some symbol in a particular place. Those things I would have hoped would be pretty easy to do. The problem in the delay is that's being proposed or requested. It's a 2-year delay from my understanding their intent is from the original implementation, which would be another year now. So we're looking at waiting 3 years to do this. And 3 years is a long time in education to just sit back and wait. And so I think it's something that we need to be concerned about, we need to address, but I'm not sure it's going to take 3 years to do it.
A number of states have implemented some of this. Who's the more advanced in the implementation, or who have you talked to?
No, I haven't talked to anybody outside.
Or has our administration talked to that?
I don't know. You have to remember, I've only been at the job
I know,
here 7 or 8 weeks. I'm
your president.
I'm learning and trying to learn fast. New York has been in it longer, and they've there are reports coming out of New York that they have had problems with the program. As I say, we have plans to do some field testing here in the district this spring to get an opportunity for our people, our students, to see what it's like. It's not going to be the entire test, but a portion of it. And for us to learn a little bit about it, for the people who developed the test to learn a little bit about it. There was reluctance on the board to go forward with this. If not this, I guess the question is, if not this, what? I mean, the letters didn't want to do this, but didn't really suggest what we should do. That we should do something different, but not really suggested what.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure about that, but I think what you do, if you're going to have these tests in the spring, evaluate that. I mean, that'll tell you better what might be next. Whether you have to, just tweak it, or whether you have to use a big knife and cut it up or somehow.
Or just change the page and get a clean sheet. Yeah. No, that was my view, and that's why I was in favor of it. I know that sometimes, and I'm not suggesting this is the entire problem, but I know that there are times when younger people are more proficient with computers than older people. I know that I regret that I've asked my 6-year-old granddaughter how she did something on the computer to get some advice, and I'm well beyond that 6-year-old age. So I think that will be an interesting and useful piece of information for us if our students have those same kinds of problems. I don't expect they'll all go away just because of the students are younger, but I think it'll be useful to find out just how they work. And if it's a total disaster, then the people at Smarter Balance need to address that.
Were these things run past any kind of student population before they actually came together into the final package?
Well, there's a lot of debate there as to how this was all formulated and put together, and who was involved in deciding what the standards would be, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard those discussions about it's a federal mandate, and I think that the people that put it together were very careful in the way that they structured it. It was governors and boards of education and all that put it together to give the appearance that it's not a federal mandate, and yet then when the federal government looks to pass out money, they look at who's using the Common Core, and you can say that makes it a federal mandate, or you can say that's a convenient measure. You know, we use the number of people who qualify for free and reduced lunch as a measure as to which schools get Title I funds and all that. So.
Well, I'm not talking about why we're doing it, because I think standards are good. You have to have something to measure your performance against, no matter what. I mean, when you get in the industry, you're going to have that all the time.
Exactly.
I mean, it works out from your budget, and you're working out to the projects, and you have to evaluate it. But you have to come up with a conclusion that this was good, this was bad, or we have to shift this, or whatever modification has to be made. And the thing that I find lacking, and what I've been reading about it, is that an example of where these things have been vetted properly. You know, you're trying to get these students to be ready for going to work industry or to go to college or some advanced education, and have those people really looked at it, had input into this is going to give us what we want as a product for the people we hire?
I can't give you a fair answer to that specific question. I know that there has been criticism that it hasn't been by some people who have said it has not been adequately vetted, but there are other people, obviously, who are proponents of this and say that they are good standards. And so it depends on which internet page you go to and
That's true.
which...
There's a lot of information that's false, and you don't know which is which. But you got a big job with the Board of Education and getting everybody together with the administration to put this package together.
Never a dull moment, and I don't know that we'll ever put everybody on the same page, but we work at it.
You'll work at it. Well, I know, I'm sure you will. You've given me a lot of information tonight, and I appreciate that. Maybe in a few months you come back and tell me, after you do those tests, what's happening.
I'd be happy to.
Okay?
Yep.
Good enough. Thank you very much, George. I enjoyed talking to you, and good luck.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed it.
Okay. Thank you.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.